Good morning. It is Monday, it's May 4th, and it is our last week of school. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to break away from the book and we're going to take a look at a financial literacy strand here. And we're going to talk a little bit about credit. We're going to talk a lot about debt and go through the different forms of credit that over your lifetime that you may be receiving or you may obtain, and explain a little bit, talk a little bit about the difference between what's considered good debt and bad debt, give you some facts on credit, and then talk about repeat a few things when we go into the 4 C's of credit, stuff like that. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to take it kind of slow. We're in no rush here. So as we sit here and we talk about credit and we talk about debt. Personal debt in the United States has exceeded $1 trillion. That's not what the government has done. That is what we have done as consumers. We have obtained over $1 trillion of debt between homes, cars, credit cards, student loans, all that stuff. $1 trillion. And unfortunately, I'm going to project that it's obviously going to increase as we're in these uncertain times, and that as some people unfortunately have lost their jobs. And I apologize to any of you that your parents have lost their job, and we're going to have to come up with other ways to pay for things. Okay, we still have to obtain groceries. We have to do stuff like that, and that's going to rack up our debt. And that's going to change our lifestyles just a little bit. So let me give you a couple facts about debt and some facts about credit cards. And there's different types of credit cards, and we'll talk about that later. But 83% of adult Americans have at least one type of credit card. On average, the average adult has at least 3 credit cards. So we have a lot of people that have credit cards, and the average interest on a credit card, the average is 16.5%. Some go much higher depending upon where you get it, but on the average, that's 16.5%. That is 4 times the amount of my home mortgage, which I'm at 4.1%. So when I was driving to South Carolina with my son, as we had to go clean out his townhouse, we got talking about, he made a comment, he loves law school, but he's not looking forward to when the student loans kick in. And we got talking a little bit about student loans and how they are a drag on some people and what they're able to do. And he's just like, I love law school, etc., but I just don't know if this is good debt or not. So we started talking about good debt and bad debt and maybe what the difference is. And I explained real quickly my simple definition of difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that I can afford, and bad debt is debt that I cannot afford. But that's not really the textbook definition. The textbook definition of good debt is debt that over time increases your net worth or has a future value to it. So a house is considered good debt. It increases your net worth. If you hang on to your house long enough, it's typically 5-6 years before you should consider selling and maybe upgrading to a different home. You typically have to hang on to a home for 5 or 6 years. So when you go to sell it, you could sell it for more and not have to lose any money. So that obviously it would be considered good debt. Most all property is considered good debt. Okay. Student loans are actually considered good debt. So when we were talking about student loans, or we haven't really talked much about investments. We would have if we would have gotten into chapter 8. An investment is something you do with the expectation that you will earn more money in the future. Buying stocks, you expect them to increase in the future if you're smart about it. Buying stocks, a 401k, something like that. Okay, playing the lottery is not an investment. That's a game of risk. Okay, but student loans, there's this expectation, guys, that you're going to go to college if you're going to college, and you're going to be better off for it. Better off means you might make a better salary, you might have better benefits, stuff like that. Okay, so there's that expectation. So student loans are going to fall into good debt. Believe it or not, cars fall into good debt for the simple reason that cars are essential. They are essential. A Mercedes, not necessarily essential. A car is essential. Car or truck to get around. What makes a car bad debt is when you take out a car loan, and now they have car loans for 7 years, 8 years. When you do that 7, 8 year loan, and it's just you stretch it out over that long period of time. Most people don't keep a car that long. They keep trading them in or upgrading, or the car just wears out, etc. But cars fall into the topic of good debt if you get a short-term loan, a shorter loan, and you're able to pay it off. Bad debt is something that typically loses value. So your college education shouldn't lose value for you. All right. Bad debt loses value over time, or has no value attached to it whatsoever. And one of the biggest differences between good debt and bad debt really relates to the interest rate. Most things that are considered bad debt have a high interest rate attached to them. And when you sit there and you take a look, that credit cards are at 17%, 18%. That's substantial, especially if you don't pay it off. So with all that being said, so what's the purpose of credit? What's the purpose of going out and borrowing this money if we're sitting here rattling off all these things that are, well, this could be good, this could be bad, this certainly is bad, etc. What's the purpose of it? Well, so you could obtain something now and then pay for it later. I don't have the money to buy a house outright. I don't have the money really to buy a car outright. So I have to borrow to do that. And it allows us to obtain things. Can you imagine if you had to pay for college strictly in cash without borrowing? Some of us might not be able to go. And borrowing money makes it hard enough already to be able to go to college. But if you had to pay for it all in cash, it might take you years and years to do it. So the purpose of credit is allow you to move forward and to get things now with the agreement that you will pay later and you will be consistent in your payments. So people that borrow are called debtors. Okay, when we borrow money, we're called debtors, and we borrow from the creditor. Those are the people that loan it out. Now, obviously, loans aren't free. We know one way at which banks make money is they make money by making loans. So we're going to take a look at the cost of credit. And to first calculate the cost of credit, you have to take a look at what's called the principal. And in principal, AL, principal is the amount of money that you borrow. So if you borrow $20,000 to go to college, that's the principal amount. You owe that $20,000 back plus interest. We're going to use a simple term called a finance charge. This is the charge to use somebody else's money. So the finance charge is typically calculated by the annual percentage rate. Most of us just call it the interest rate. So a lot of times credit card companies advertise, annual percentage rate at such and such a rate and all that. That's your interest rate. Okay. Annuals, yearly, they'll take it, divide it by 12 and apply it to your principal amount each month. So a lot of times you're going to be given an option of getting a fixed rate or what's called a variable rate. A fixed rate obviously is a set rate. That is the rate at which it's not going to change. My home mortgage for the house I live in now is a fixed mortgage rate at 4.1% for 30 years. Now, can I change it? The answer is yes. I could refinance my house. Let's say interest rates drop to 2%. Maybe I refinance it, save myself, lower my monthly payments, save myself some money, something like that. Maybe I refinance my home. Okay, I could do that. But let's say it's at 4.1% and interest rates skyrocket to 6, 7, 8, 9%. I am still fixed at 4.1%. That's kind of why I like the fixed rate. Some people prefer a variable rate, which changes. Obviously, it's variable. It changes over time. And sometimes the lender can change that rate without notice. guys, this happens a lot on credit cards. They might advertise a fixed rate, but there's probably some sort of fine print that says if you pay late, if you miss a payment, the rate now becomes a variable rate and it fluctuates according to how the market is going. So I prefer to obtain rates that are fixed. And then if things change, maybe I refinance it, or I just stay at fixed rate because I'm happy with it and it works within my budget, my financial plan. So let's take a look at, we're going to skip this. Let's just take a look at the cost of credit here. So I put down here an example of early in 2000, I had built a home. Before this home, I had built a home and I borrowed $84,262.03. At that point in time, in early 2000, the interest rate was at 6.75%. That's what I got it for, based upon what the going rates were, based upon my credit score. I got it for 6.75%. We know interest rates are down now, and I did it for 360 months, which is 30 years. So I took out a 30-year loan. Now, I owe them in 30 years, I have to pay them back $84,000. But for the right to use that $84,000, they're going to charge me. So with the full disclosure that the Fed requires, they have to share with you all the charges. So that's where I got all these numbers from. So I pulled up the loan document. And my overall finance charge over 30 years, if I paid off my home and I did it, and I took my payment and I did it monthly, I didn't do any more, and I met everything on time, I would have paid them back an additional $137,111.75 as a finance charge. That $137,000 is an additional charge for the right to borrow the $84,000. And then they show you, when everything is said and done, this is how much you pay back. It would be $221,373.78. Credit is expensive. It becomes way more expensive if you start missing payments and stuff like that. But so there's a cost to credit. There is no doubt. So you have to sit there and you have to take a look at it. Man, $84,000. Well, I didn't have $84,000. So and we needed a place to live. So that's what we borrowed. The going rate, and it was a good rate at the time at 6.75%. I did it for 30 years to keep my payments low, but my finance charges were going to be a little higher over 30 years, $137,000. And then if I would have just, like I said, if I would have made my payments every month and not have sold the home, I would have paid them back $221,000 plus. So that obviously is a boatload of money. So how do you get that lowest possible interest rate? So let's go back through really quickly the 4 C's of credit, and we're just going to talk about it because Ian and I got talking about this as well. So when they sit there and they take a look at character, they take a look at your past paying habits. And again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to pay things on time. So we're done Friday, but you have through the following week, I think it's to the 14th, to make up any missing assignments. Those are late assignments. Those late assignments are going to cost you a couple points. Points that you wouldn't have lost if you would have paid it on time. But that just goes to, that's just the cost of doing it late. So when they sit there and look at your character, they look at your past paying habits. And we got talking about this, how long you lived at your current address. And for you guys, we know you're going to bounce around. And we know at the beginning you're going to rent versus owning until you settle in. But what they're looking for in this character capacity is kind of a little bit of stability. If you continue to bounce around every 6-7 months to a different place and you're always renting, we're going to say you're not very stable. But younger people bounce around and they know that. So that's okay. It's somebody like me that I shouldn't be bouncing around from place to place. Okay, they're going to look at your capacity. They're going to look at how much you make. How long have you held your current job? And we're going to change jobs. And I've changed through, this is my third school. I taught in Statesville, North Carolina. I taught at Revere High School, and now obviously here. But I've still been in the field of education. They're going to take a look at how much I make. They're going to take a look at my yearly salary, and they're going to take a look at my capital. They're going to take a look at my income plus my savings and checking and add it up, because they want to determine how good of a risk I am. And they're going to look at, do I regularly put money into the bank? So Ian, I got talking about this because, he goes, well, most everybody has direct deposit, which I do. He goes, so it shows everybody's putting it into the bank, which is true. But do you always take all of it out? Do you debit yourself almost back down to zero again? Hopefully the answer is no. So we're going to look at your income plus savings and checking. That is why it is very important to have a banking account, because they're looking at that. They're looking at how you manage your money. Then they're going to look at your collateral. What do you have to secure your loan should you default on it? So we've talked about that, the 4 C's of credit: character, capacity, capital, and collateral. And the better your 4 C's are, the better your interest rate is going to be. But we know deep down that really your interest rate is based upon your credit score, your FICO score. So let's take a look at that real quick. And the first two is that, and again, we talked about this, your payment history, 35%. I'm going to say it again. Pay your stuff on time. How much do you owe? Length of credit. How long have you held your credit? New credit. Are you constantly going out and getting new loans? Are you constantly going out and getting new store cards? Or what are you doing? And types of credit you currently have in use. We have some store cards. I have a Home Depot card, and I believe I have a card from Goodyear. Haven't used them for a long time. I have them, but they're not in use. The cards in use, I just paid the bills. The cards currently in use right now are a MasterCard and Discover card, period, along with my car loans and my house loan. That's it. So, and then we sat there, they add all this up and they come up with that thing called a credit score. And all they're doing is taking a look at your credit worthiness. But here's something else, and you probably should write this down. It's not down. It's called your debt to income ratio. And I should have put it down, and I didn't. Your debt to income ratio looks at how much money do you owe and how much money do you make. Now, if you sit there and you take a look at, you add up what I owe total on my cars, you take a look at how much I owe on my home, I wouldn't have a very good debt to income ratio. But they take it kind of a step further. And what they do is they look at your monthly income versus your monthly debt. So let's say my monthly income is $4,000. And so I'm just going to write down $4,000 here on this piece of paper. So that's my income. So I get paid twice a month. So I bring in $4,000 a month. You add up my home, you add up my cars, you add up my credit card, and let's say that all totals to $2,500. That's how much I owe. So I have left over roughly $1,500 for other expenses, other bills, food, stuff like that. So they sit there and they take a look at what's called your debt to income ratio. When I was trying to describe to my son the difference between good debt and bad debt, my simple definition is good debt is debt that I can afford, and bad debt is debt that I cannot afford. Good debt is where I get my bill and I could write a check for the month, and I make my house payment and I make my car payments. All of that. I have money left over. I'm able to put money into the bank, which they take a look at in your 4 C's of credit. Bad debt is when I have to choose between one bill versus the other because I can't afford it at the moment. Okay. And guys, it's getting hard for some people. And again, I apologize if you're in that situation. I understand that with at a 20% unemployment rate that things are tough right at the moment. So the debt to income ratio is huge when they sit there and determine how credit worthy are you. That if I gave you, this is the bank speaking, if I gave you this loan, your debt to if my debt to income ratio, and I was bringing in $4,000, and by getting another loan, my debt would be $4,000. I have no money left over. When we were talking, because before law school, he was living in Charlotte, and he was saying he had been in some homes that were really nice homes that had little to no furniture in them. And I said, I go, they're what we call house poor. All their money goes into their home, but they can't have other things attached to it. So as we sit here and take a look at it, I told him I would rather have a smaller home, or maybe a home that's, quote, not as nice, and be able to put furniture in it. Be able to go out to dinner, let's say once a month. Be able to go on a vacation. It doesn't have to be a beach vacation or something like that. Just go somewhere different. So as we sit here and we take a look at this and how they calculate things, we're gonna finish with these three types of forms of credit. So we have what's called long-term credit. Long-term credit could be a house, could be a car. Long-term credit is generally designed to last longer than 3 years. That is considered long-term credit. That it lasts longer than 3 years. My home is 30 years. Not really sure where we're at on my wife's car. It was a 5-year loan. We might be under that 3-year period now. She's had her car longer than I have. But long-term credit, a student loan is going to be long-term credit. And then we have something called short-term credit. It's generally designed to last less than 3 years. And a lot of times that's where credit cards and stuff come in. So sometimes people will go out and they'll put their dinner on a credit card. Okay. And I'm not, that is everybody's choice. And if you know what, if you pay off your credit card bill when it comes to you, that is brilliant. That's not debt at all. You kind of pushed it off to the side and then you paid it. It's when you don't pay off the full amount, then it turns into debt. And credit card companies are very good at trying to get you to wait. They will show you, they will show you, here's a minimum payment that you can pay. And how brilliant would that be if I just made a minimum payment? So if we were in class, I would probably show you, I took a credit card bill from long ago. And what credit card companies do now is they have to share with you what would happen if you only made your minimum payment. So on this credit card bill, I had just signed up for 2 grad classes. And when I was getting a master's degree, I signed up for grad classes. There was 2 gasoline purchases on there and stuff like that. So here it was. My balance was $4,738.31. I owe them $4,700. So I could pay them the entire $4,700, or they gave me the option of saying, hey, you only need to pay a minimum amount. Pay us $77. So I could pay them $4,700, or I could pay them $77. Well, sometimes some people say, you know what, I'm going to pay $77 and I'll pay off the rest later. I'll chip away at it. So here's what credit card companies share with you now. And it's not to, they do it because they're required to. Let's just put it that way. If I only made my minimum payment of $77 on that 40, I owe them $4,700. If I made my minimum payment of $77, and at my current APR, that's my interest rate, if I did that, it would take me 21 years to pay off $4,700 by always paying the minimum payment. And if I did that, if I always paid them the minimum payment, I would have paid them, instead of $4,700, I would have paid them $7,706.05. I would have paid them $3,000 more in just charges by making the minimum payment. So they show you again, well, what happens if I virtually double my payment. Instead of $77, I'm going to pay them $149. I take that 21 years down to 36 months. I take that total amount I would have paid them by making a minimum payment of $7,700, and I would have dropped it to $5,300 and saved myself roughly $2,300. So making the minimum payment sometimes is necessary, and it might be necessary right now during this time frame. But quickly, when things pick back up, you go back and you make a little bit more than minimum payment. Just so you know, I knew I had that grad class. I had saved it up. The reason I had my grad class on a credit card, because that's how you signed up for classes. And I owed them $4,700, and I set aside $4,500. So I wrote them a check for $4,500, had a couple $100 left over, and probably paid it off the next month. Here's the last type of credit. It's called service credit. Now, this is different. It's credit because it's this way. It's the ability to obtain a service and pay for it later. So I just paid my gas bill. So my gas bill was $66. I'm on a budget. So to use gas for the month cost me $66. And they readjust your budget every year. But I'll get an electric bill here coming up, and I'm going to pay for last month's electric usage. That's called service credit. Cable's typically fixed, stuff like that. But that is a form that's called service credit. So there's really three types of credit. There's long-term credit, short-term credit, and service credit. Long-term credit, a lot of times, are mortgages and car loans. Short-term credit cards are designed to be short-term. They don't always work out to be short-term, but they're designed to be short-term. And then there's what's called service credit, which is your utilities and stuff like that you get every month, or your parents get every month. Your cell phone, that's all service credit. Okay, so we're going to stop there for today. That's where we're at. We're going to add more to it. And we're gonna kind of stretch this out over a couple days and just continue to talk about credit and debt and get into the different forms of credit that you can use or that's obtainable for you. And again, a reminder that if you have some outstanding assignments, you have some missing assignments, get them done. So what if you lose a point? And I'm not taking off a lot of points. Get them done so you have everything, and then hopefully you have a good day. There's office hours from 10 to 11 if you want to stop in and ask questions, especially if you have questions regarding the test that we had last week or questions regarding a grade. Stop in and ask me. It's easier that way. But anyways, I hope you have a great day again, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.